Make this Christmas memorable with Goat Guns. Get the coolest miniature gun models for your collection. From historical classics to modern weapons, we have something for every firearm and hobby enthusiast. Surprise your loved ones with the gift of Goat Guns, the perfect blend of quality and detail. Shop now and spread the joy at goatguns.com.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Nitin Govila about how mindful workspaces are conducive to deep work and creativity. Nitin Govila, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me here. And it's a great pleasure to speak to you today.
It's a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the other side of the world, and you'll, I'm sure, share more about that with us here in just a minute. But I'm super excited to have the opportunity to chat with you. I'm joining the conversation from Utah, and ultimately, we're going to be talking today about mindful workspaces and how those sorts of workspaces can be conducive to deep work and creativity. And we all want to work in an organization that's innovative and creative and dynamic and engaging. But we also tend to have organizations that aren't particularly, mindful spaces, where it's hectic and a little bit crazy, and we're just kind of running around like chickens with our heads cut off. And that isn't, always the right mix for trying to foster the deep work and the creativity. So we're going to look at how we can go about doing that better within our organizations, and how, each of us as leaders can foster that kind of an environment and atmosphere within our individual teams. As we get started, I wanted to share Nitin's bio with everybody. Singapore-based Nitin Govila is a management leader, entrepreneur, engineer, and meditation trainer. He's done a lot of work with Ferrari, a leader in the flexible composite material sector. His scope of operations covers Japan, Korea, China, Hong Kong, India, Asian countries, Australia, New Zealand, Middle East, and Africa. He's born in India, educated and worked in France, based in Singapore. In addition to overseeing business operations and management of 7 legal distribution entities and a newly acquired Taiwanese company across the Asia Pacific, Middle East, and African region, Nitin is a member of the Group Executive Committee, helping define the company's long-term strategy and key decisions for the future growth of the organization. He manages a 175-member global team. And I could go on and on. What a wonderful career that you have had. What amazing work you're currently doing. Anything else you would like to add and share with listeners by way of your background or context before we dive on in further?
No, I think most of it in brief, John, you have covered that, and thanks for that. I'd just say, as you said, one of the key elements for me as a professional has not only been the education and the varied experience across working cultures in India, Europe, and then in Asia Pacific across many countries, has also been the aspect that I've been involved or being in meditation for the last 20 plus years, and also work as a volunteer, as a meditation trainer for an organization called Heartfulness Meditation, helping corporates, helping people and communities at large to also integrate this very interesting aspect in their work life or their personal life to achieve the right level of balance.
Yeah, I really like that. And that's actually the first thing I wanted to ask you about, this kind of meditative mindfulness approach. You also refer to it as the heart-centered approach to working within organizations and leading people. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that and how that kind of an approach can be used in assisting corporate teams and providing better clarity and balance of mind to their teams in their organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the meditation which I follow as heartfulness meditation, as the name goes, heart is the center of it. We meditate on the heart. And the reason heart, I emphasize the importance of the heart is because over many years, we've always, and in traditions, we've always believed heart to be the center or the seat of the soul, the center of consciousness, and also a bridge between mind and body. But now this has also been corroborated by scientific research, where they have been able to prove that the intelligence in the heart is much more profound and complex than we ever knew. So just not knowing the heart as a simple pumping place for the blood across the body, we've also found that the heart has its own intelligence, which aligns the core functionings of all core systems in the brain and the body, and that creates the necessary coherence and balance. And in fact, what I was surprised to learn and hear was that in fact heart sends more signals to the brain than the opposite way, and it's up to more than 5,000 times more powerful. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that the heart, in a way, has more sensitivity and are able to perceive, and it also gives us the first indication or voice to start working or to start taking decisions, or how we need to progress or proceed. But the problem comes is, is our mind at rest and calm enough to be able to hear this voice of the heart? And this is where, if we can find a way where we are able to access this knowledge and the deep feeling which the heart provides, then we have all the necessary things at our disposal to have enhance our physical and emotional well-being, our higher level of resourcefulness, the creativity and consciousness. And this is where I feel even neuroscientists feel that heart holds the promise for the next level of human development and evolution. So that's where I say that using the heart as a professional or even as a normal individual in your daily life and taking decisions or interacting and being able to feel connected throughout the day is a very great way to move ahead and carry on with our lives.
Yeah, I really like that background and explanation you just provided. And again, providing clarity and balance, I think, is always an important facet. And for a long time, I've thought about, how we process information, how we think and how we feel. And it's both in our heart and in our mind. And a lot of times we think about making rational decisions, rational choices through our mind. But there's something more there that connects the two. And you just, I think, described that really, really well. And I appreciate that. And so this heart-centered approach, certainly, I suppose we could think about heart-centered in terms of how a lot of people probably think of heart-centered, generosity, love, compassion, empathy, those sorts of things aren't contrary to what you're describing, but it's not exclusively what you're describing either. So I think that's worth pointing out. A lot of times when we talk about heart-centered, we're tend to focus on compassionate leadership or empathetic leadership or those sorts of things. You're talking about how do we connect the heart more through our mindfulness practices to have clarity, to have balance, and ultimately to drive better creativity, better decision making, and everything along those lines. And so that brings us to this whole idea of mindful workspaces. I love the idea. We've talked a lot on this podcast in the past about mindfulness practices, about how I can go about as an individual to practice mindfulness, or even as a leader, how I can try to model and encourage members of my team to also practice mindfulness. I love this idea of really trying to foster and create a healthy, mindful workspace where people can interact with each other. Tell us a little bit more about that, what you mean by that, and how we might go about creating that kind of a workspace.
Yeah. So what I meant when I talked about mindful workspace was basically in the element that one comes how we design the workspace. In terms of interacting not only with the nature outside your building, but also inside. That's one element, and I can elaborate that a bit later. The second part is in terms of, are we creating necessary spaces in a way that we are able to hear and understand each other? And thirdly, are we also creating a space where we just talked about the heart-based element, an aspect of meditation, or being able to connect few times or whenever we want with our inner self? Do we have a space where I feel, okay, I don't want to sit on my chair today. I'm just feeling this moment I need for myself for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Do we have those kinds of spaces within our offices or our workplace that somebody can just kind of extract himself or herself out of that, go in that space, try to be connected, just try to be with yourself. And then when you come back, that's those 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever that time that person takes, that person is totally refreshed, starts seeing things in a very different way and starts working in a different way. So I would put it in that three elements. When I come to the first part, when I say how the workspaces are designed and how do you create the right environment, what I'm talking about is that, are we having offices in the right way that we are able to manage the heat, the light, and the acoustics, the sound which is in the office, right? Most of it, sometimes we try to, in obviously you're in a colder part. I'm sure it's getting colder and colder there. I'm in a part which is near equator. We don't even know what are four seasons, in a way, if I may say so. So in that sense, right, we try to have air conditioning inside, but how do you know which is the right temperature? We all know that this is the right temperature to save energy and to have an optimum level of comfort, but do we really follow that, right? And why? Because there's a lot of heat which is coming inside the building, and once it's inside, you have to find a way that your space is comfortable. But is there a way, are you designing offices where you can block the heat on the outside, for example? Now, when it comes inside, how are your spaces designed that you're able to manage the glare, the light, right? Because that's another level. Sometimes you're moving your screen up and down. Oh, this angle is not correct. Now with video calls, that also becomes much more important, right? The light is not correct or the sound is not correct, for example. And then the third element, which is, I would say, most often ignored element, is how do you manage the sound and the acoustics? I always differentiate between sound and noise. So if it's open spaces, which is becoming a more trend now, even top managers don't have kind of cabins and offices like in our head office in France. We've kind of moved away from that because people used to travel, and obviously that's starting now. So when they come, why to block a space? Let's sit wherever we can and work, and that's a good way to interact. But then how do you manage that when people are talking, but it's not becoming difficult noise, I would say, but a comfortable sound, meaning you're able to say, but you're also able to hear and understand. Now, we don't design that, right? We don't think of acoustic when designing a workplace. Okay, we design the layout, we design where anybody will sit. But do we ever think that, more and more when we talk to each other, I should not feel stressed out. I should not feel that I'm not able to focus because I'm hearing somebody talking there, and it's all becoming a clutter and a noise. So I'm trying to say that there's a good noise, which I equate as sound. Now, how do we do that? So these are few elements when I summarize that: heat, light, and acoustics. And then obviously the element of getting a space of yourself where you can kind of extract yourself, kind of reconnect and come back to the common working space and carry on.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the focus on those physical elements, the heat, the light, the noise. All of that is so important as we consider how we design our physical workspaces. And I have to admit, when I was first thinking about mindful workspaces, I hadn't thought about all of those physical elements. So I think that's incredibly important, and we need to think more about it. And you're right, it is a trend. Those open concept office spaces that's become more and more popular over the last decade or so. And there's been more and more research to show how it's become problematic for a lot of people. The idea of fostering collaboration and innovation seemed nice, but the reality is, because of all of the noise and the just the distraction, that in many ways it's actually decreased the amount of meaningful collaborations and the innovation that can occur, and just the overall productivity of people. And so we need to be thoughtful about collaborative spaces. And I don't think there's a one size fits all. Like some organizations are going to have traditional offices with 4 walls and a door. Some are going to have cubicles. Some are going to have open concept spaces, or maybe some combination, right? Where you have a hybrid approach where you have collaborative workspaces and areas where people can get together, but also shared spaces, individual offices, whatever, depending on the work that needs to be done. And I guess that's ultimately what we have to consider most. And if we can be thoughtful about those physical elements, that's going to foster greater mental health, and not to mention the environmental sustainability piece that you also referred to. Now, as we think about these types of mindfulness practices, mindful workspaces, both the physical components, but also non-physical components,
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
Why and how are those conducive to deeper work, greater levels of creativity, more meaningful collaborations? Why is it that mindful workspaces help to create an environment where people thrive a little bit in a deeper way in terms of their creativity?
So, we go back to the starting point when we talked about the heart-based approach, right? In the end, why do we need that? We need it because the mind is continuously active. It cannot rest, it absolutely cannot rest. I was surprised when I came to know a few years back that actually an average human being has nearly 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Now imagine we are not even aware of that, right? We just focus on maybe 3-4 things to do, which we are working on, right? And same time, but there's a lot of things going at the back end, and this is where the subconscious element of the mind comes into play. Now what happens is, if you understand, if you go deeper into a little bit how the brain works, when we are working on certain things, as I said, maybe 3-4 or 5 or maybe lesser, then it's the frontal part or the prefrontal cortex which is working, which is the rational element of the mind. It processes that. We are using our energy on that. The moment we understand it, it's like a training. We are being trained on something. The moment we become well trained, then it goes into the subconscious because we go into the auto mode. Now, what happens is the same process when we look at as a professional, when we are taking decisions, right? Any professional is expected to look at all the facts at hand, all the data at hand, listen to people, and the mind is processing, right? When the mind processes that, automatically it moves to the subconscious part, which is the limbic part of the brain, where it's also adding that those rational part and complementing it with the part of the wisdom which already exists. This wisdom has come through observation. this wisdom has come because the subconscious is still running at the back end. It's like a processor, right? Like a CPU. It's running at the back end. It sees, you don't even know, it sees, it gains its wisdom. And then it connects that wisdom to the rational part of it. Now, the challenge, what happens is, after, how does that limbic part or the subconscious part communicate to the rational part of the brain? And this is where there is no wired, I mean, there's a wired network, as we say, neurons and everything. But the challenge there is that how does it do that? And the neuroscience says the way it does it is through feeling, not transmitting through as language or words. Now, if the rational part then has to perceive that feeling, it needs to be at rest and calm, right? To be able to feel that. And it will just come as a sensation, or just as an initial thought or sensation which will come. If your mind is not at rest, you will not be able to catch it. And then you're still using the rational part. You're not able to supplement and add that the element which is coming through the all wisdom which exists inside you, right? So this is where the part that if you have a comfortable workspace, you are also able to put your mind at rest. If you're also having an element of a meditative practice, no matter whatever, it could be mindfulness, it could be heartfulness meditation, anything which you believe and you follow in, if you're able to do that and able to bring your mind at rest, then you're able to expand your capacity to perceive and capture that feeling trigger or the feeling sensation which comes. And then when you add that to the rational part of it, you will be able to generally take the correct decision. Now, the correct, we should not measure it in the way of right or wrong, because in the material element, sometimes those decisions may look, oh, what did you do? Why did you decide like that? But over a period of time, you will realize that was the best decision to take, and this is where having the right workspace, which is either physical elements of heat, light, and sound, but at the same time, to be able to have a certain practice where you're able to connect with yourself, put your mind at rest and ease, and able to then perceive that feeling, ensures that we are able to do. So many leaders say, oh, everything was okay, but my gut said not to go ahead with that, right? My inner sensation said not to go ahead with that. Now, we may have different words for it as we have been brought up in different environments, but in the end, it's the same thing, that feeling element which came, which told you, yes, this is what you should be doing, or no, this something does not feel right, let's not go ahead with that.
Yeah, well said. And it really does depend on the person too. So like you mentioned already, there's all these different types of mindful practices that we can participate in, that we can be involved in. And for some people, it's kind of more formal prayer, if that's their religious upbringing. For other people, it's meditation. For some people, it's just walking, exercise, getting out in nature. Sure. I'm thinking in my office, there's a few things that I try to do. The first thing is I don't like mess. And so if there's mess, I feel stressed. So the very first thing in terms of just physical space is that everything has its place, and I just put things where they go, and then there's no mess and I'm not stressed. That's not to say that I don't have a little bit of clutter. Sometimes I do collect knickknacks, and when I travel, I collect things and I put them different places. And so it's not like my office is sterile. It has a personality. I have, these things that are meaningful to me, but I don't have papers everywhere. I don't have just stuff everywhere. And that in and of itself, even without me doing anything else, that allows me to go into my office and feel relaxed just from the get-go. Two other things that I do, I have like a little mini elliptical that I can do it while I'm at my desk, but I also will sometimes, if I'm just like on a call, I'll just be standing on my elliptical and just moving, and just the physical motion it helps me clear my mind, and it just helps me feel more comfortable and I think better when I'm doing that. So even though I'm just in my office, I'm just doing that motion and it helps. Something else that I do, I can't do it while I'm on a call necessarily, but I play the drums a little bit. And so I have some drumsticks, and sometimes I'll just, I don't want to be distracting to people around me. So I have stuff to damper the noise, but I'll just practice and just do rhythms and beats. And it's just a very simple physical thing that I can do to kind of recenter, to connect body and mind. and then I'm ready, to go off, and my mind is sharper because of that. Those are just silly things that I do. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that people can do, and whatever seems to work for you, then you want to try to do it. And as a leader, we want to model that for people. We want to give them permission to do those sorts of things. And overall, we just want to have a nice environment where people come, regardless of whatever we choose as our physical workspace arrangements, that we are strategic and purposeful about it, and that we create a welcoming environment that's conducive to people just being able to feel safe, to feel comfortable, and to be able to feel like they can collaborate in meaningful ways.
Absolutely. And actually what you said is absolutely correct. I mean, we have to find our own journey. We have to find the tools which will help us in our own journey. Now, whether it means a bit of exercise, a bit of, taking your mind off because somebody's involved in any other activity, whether it means taking out a few minutes to connect with your inner self, or a prayer or a meditation practice. In the end, the whole element is we realize we are getting stressed. We realize that the mind is wandering. Is there a way to, bring back the focus again? And the key thing is, I think that's where organizations have to bring more attention to that. For sure, COVID has driven this element of workplace well-being, wellness at work. But the question really is that are organizations taking a holistic approach or not? I mean, you find some organizations focusing on, say, maybe a yoga or a physical activity, some others doing some talks by some experts on different topics. But the real element is needed to mix everything, to bring a holistic approach. One is obviously design of the workspace, as we talked about that, that, and also now more and more it becomes important. Whereas when I'm talking to many companies, the challenge they say is to get people back to work in the office, right? But organizations is what? It's a physical area, right? It's an area where you interact with people. That's an organization. I mean, I'm reminded of a very interesting Chinese character, which has two elements to it. It says, and one element is people. So they say, come in there. I mean, because it's a very intuitive language in a way, it brings characters and that's where the words are formed. So if you remove the people, there is no company. That's the way that character explains. So if you look at it, if you don't have people interacting, if you don't have people exchanging with each other, yes, virtual times are good and they've helped us in these difficult times. But yes, now we need to come to a space where we can again see each other. Maybe it may not happen 5 days a week, but we need to find ways that people are at least coming maybe some more days a week, so that and that's where the organization culture remains. We talk a lot about culture. How much culture can you keep just by having virtual calls, for that matter, right? So have I looked at it in terms of space, so that when people come, welcome. People have been doing calls from the comfort of their homes or whatever. Am I able to create a second kind of home in offices for them, right? And then all the other elements do I bring to them, whether an expert talking about meditation, an expert talking about the yoga, or any other physical elements, or any other how you organize your life in terms of time management, in terms of habits creation, in terms of other elements. So I think that wellness as a holistic element has to come in. First steps have been taken, but I think there's still a lot more work to be done in that direction for organizations to have the right kind of workspace.
Yeah. Very well said. You've shared so many great insights and ideas, a lot to chew on, and I appreciate you sharing that with me and my listeners today. Nitin, it has been a real pleasure talking with you. I know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, thanks, John. And thank you again for having me there. I know the time difference does not make it easy to schedule, but okay. I mean, let's thank the virtual elements of Zoom to help us see each other and speak to each other. So they can, anybody who wishes to contact me can contact me through my LinkedIn profile under the name Nitin Govila, or you can search with the company Search Ferrari group, and you can find me, you can message me, and then we can, if you want to further enhance this discussion or further connect me more to understand more and how we can, take our discussion further, please feel free to do so. On the workspace part, I think I have nothing much to add, John. I've kind of covered that. As I said just a few minutes back, I think a holistic approach to a good workspace, or as you say, a mindful workspace is needed. And it kind of includes the physical elements, if I may say so, the spiritual or the internal elements for a person. There's a right level of balance that is needed now, and I'm sure once organizations start doing that, or at least start understanding that they have to do this, I'm sure we are on the right track. And maybe in a decade or so, we will be talking about not only mindful workspaces, we might actually start using the word of mindful organizations or companies, or in that sense. So we all look forward to that day. And thank you again, John, for having me over.
Thank you. It has just been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Nitin and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life.
Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.
Make this Christmas memorable with Goat Guns. Get the coolest miniature gun models for your collection. From historical classics to modern weapons, we have something for every firearm and hobby enthusiast. Surprise your loved ones with the gift of Goat Guns, the perfect blend of quality and detail. Shop now and spread the joy at goatguns.com.